This episode is brought to you by Netflix. Jay Kelly, the new film from Academy Award nominee Noah Baumbach. George Clooney stars as an actor confronting his past and present on a journey of self-discovery, alongside Adam Sandler as his devoted manager. Critics are calling it a declaration of love to the chaotic art of filmmaking, with the Wall Street Journal praising it as a transcendent comedy drama. Jay Kelly is now playing only on Netflix.
Grabbing the holidays by the boughs with Duluth. Step 1. Hire a mall Santa to handle snow removal.
Ho, ho, ho! My sciatica!
Step 2. Hit Duluth Trading and load up on fire hose pants, buck naked underwear, pocket pack bibs, free swinging flannel, and all kinds of ingenious gear you won't find anywhere else. Grab the holidays by the boughs and shop Duluth Trading, online and in store.
Hello, family. I'm Janaya Future Khan, and this is Dark Woke. Just before we hit it, I want to say thank you to all the listeners out there, and a special shout out to the supporters who make this show possible. It truly means the world to me. If you'd like to become a member, our Patreon is linked in the episode right up below. Family. Oh, what a time to be alive. We have a stacked plate. I have, as usual, a million things I want to talk to you about, but I'm going to locate it in this major merger that happened around Netflix acquiring Warner Bros. Discovery, which used to be its own two entities, which used to be a million other entities, okay? But we're not really going to be talking about the deal just because it's as messed up as we think it is, right? So I'm going to cover the whole spread for what matters most about that deal. But we're cooking, we're going somewhere. I'm going to talk to you about that weird, slick, oily feeling that we've been getting anytime we go online, anytime we read about these mergers, when we think about the political incoherence, right? And how everything just seems to be getting worse. We've discussed things like enshittification, right? Lack of antitrust laws, but there's something guiding all of this. And it's really hard to know what that thing is until it snaps and you're like, oh my God, it's this. Because a lot of things aren't making sense. And I don't mean a lot of things aren't making sense like, the way that a bunch of talentless hacks are running the country into the ground. I'm talking about the fact that the talentless hacks are rushing everything to the ground, right? They're just running right into the ground. This is me not trying to swear less, right? But like, why? Why did it happen? We say things, we like racism, right? Totally. Capitalism, 100%. That's okay. Nationalism, definitely. A bunch of other factors that I could go in on. What we do know is that there's a bunch of reasons, but what's the thing that's uniting all of it, right? What is it? Because a lot has changed this year. I'm going to read you a headline, okay, before we get into it, just to help illustrate. Because I'm going to tell you the exact first thought that I thought when I read this headline, okay? So on AP News, it says 12 FBI agents fired for kneeling during racial justice protest. They sued to get their jobs back. And I'm like, not me defending my ops. Like, not me having something in common with the ops. And I look and it's like, there are 12 largely white ladies, right? From what I could tell in the picture, but there's other folks too. And yeah, they were kneeling in 2020, right? So they're suing to get their jobs back. And I'm like, there's so many layers to that. Cause I'm just like, first of all, pass me the dossier. You know what I mean? Where is it? I need it unredacted. Okay, give it to me unredacted. But the other side of it is how odd. What an odd thing. What an odd thing to have to read and then to think about, right? There's all these things around free speech and expression. There's the fact that these are the ops. There's the, do I have more in common with these folks and other folks? What the hell is going on? Okay. Can't think of something better than that one headline. There's so many good headlines, but that one stood out to me in its seriousness because I love a deranged headline. So I'm going to hit you with this massive merger deal. Who's really getting impacted by it? But y'all know we live in meat and potatoes, and that's where we're going. So this is one where I'm going to yap, but I'm going to yap succinctly. And I'm going to make it as non-hysterical as possible. But the truth is, babe, that's where I live now. That's where I live now. I'm going to be cooking towards the end. So buckle in, babies. Here we go. So, of course, you may have seen on the news, right? I've heard them yapping about it online. Netflix wants to buy Warner Bros., right, and Discovery. So here are the details of the deal, okay? So Netflix agreed to buy them. This includes their TV and film studios, right, everything, and their streaming division for around $72 billion, okay? This is a huge, massive blockbuster deal that would give Netflix, which is a streaming pioneer, control of Hollywood's, their most prized and oldest assets, like the Hollywood sign that I sometimes see when I'm out in these streets, depending on where I am, right? And this is as significant as replacing Hollywood with Netflix. That's how big this is, okay? Because this is canon Hollywood, okay? That's what Warner represents. So this has followed a weeks-long bidding war, and Netflix was able to get in there with like a 28 a share offer, which beat out Paramount's $24 bid for the whole of it, right? This would include also their cable TV assets slated for. But I don't care about this part. Do you know what I mean? Like this. But what matters here? Do you want to know what matters here? Is that this deal would give Netflix. So, and what I just described is a cash and stock deal. I want you to hear it that way too, because we'll be talking about that more. Okay. It would give the world's largest paid streamer, that's Netflix, right? This massive streaming service, expansive power over theater owners and entertainment industry unions. That's the part that we need to care about, right? About this. There's a million parts, but this is really within our purview. So again, a cash and stock deal would give Netflix, which is the world's largest paid streaming service, expansive powers over theater owners and entertainment industry unions. Now, take a beat before we get into that, right? The actors have been talking online about what their experience was, right? When you were on TV, right, and you get your little plug or whatever, and later down the line, you get these checks, right? Y'all know what I'm talking about? Okay, great. You get checks because you were built in on the deal, right? There was a way for you to monetize off of the use of your personhood, your likeness over time. So anytime that these cable networks, for example, use that, right? Use that episode that you were in, you would get paid for it. That's a good thing. So something really insignificant, right? Like a small role could accumulate to tens of thousands of dollars over years, over weeks, over months, and you'd get that check and you'd be able to live. That wasn't the case for the stars of Orange is the New Black, right? So they instead of the thousands of dollars that people could expect from the continued use of their likeness, right? They weren't getting no check like that. They were getting paid $28. Do you remember how big Orange is the New Black, right? You remember how big that was? You remember? And we were all watching it until it got really like too much. And then we kept watching it anyway. Okay. So that's a consideration I just wanted us to be mindful of as I go into this, okay? Number one, does this break antitrust laws? Somebody get Lena Khan. Get her. Go get Lena Khan. She knows what's up. Listen, whether or not it breaks the laws depends on who the federal regulators are. Guess what kind of federal regulators we have now, okay? This is the Trump administration's purview. And I think we all know as long as they get a fat slice of the pie, they're going to be absolutely perfectly fine with this, right? In all of the news, they say they're going to face scrutiny for this deal. I'm like, I'm going to need something a little bit stronger than scrutiny, my guys. Just give me, you know what I mean? Scrutiny just doesn't cut it. Even if the deal doesn't get made, there's still a breakup fee, but that's very typical. In this case, it'd be like 5.8 billion, right? Just a normal amount of money, you guys. Just be cool, you know? Anyway, Paramount is fighting back. They want it. They're not supposed to, because part of the contract is you can't get in bed with or flirt with or talk to anybody else. You're in bed with us, okay? So Paramount's gone rogue. They're a bit hostile right now because they want to make an additional deal. They said that they felt like they never got a fair shake, okay? So just know that that's happening. They offered more money, like $18 billion more. And you know Trump loves to insert himself into things. I'm like, that's what happens when you don't get things inserted into you. I'm gonna leave that one there. Oopsies. Does this mean an end to movie theaters? That's a valid question. Does that mean that we're not going to be going on our little dates? What are the straights going to do? What are the straights? Where are they going to go? If we take away movies, all they're going to have is mini golf. You're worried about straight culture dying. You're worried about the Western world collapsing. That's all straight people have. It's just they go to a movie and they go to dinner, but the restaurants are closing. And all they're going to have is the mini golf. We got to help the straight people out. They need the movie theaters so that they are not forced to have conversation with each other, because it's brutal for them to do that. Okay? So let's get some action there. Where's those straight pride people now? This is your moment. You needed a call to action that wasn't simply, well, you guys get more attention than I do. This is your moment. This is your fucking moment, my guys. All right? What are you going to do? You're going to talk to your girlfriends about the thoughts in your head? That's when they leave you. So you need movies. You need movies to save Western culture is what I'm saying. You need movie theaters specifically, okay? Anyway, that's a really good question. This was a question that I had. So if Netflix has acquired this, you got to think to yourself, they have a vested interest in this. I want you, as you're thinking about this deal, to also think about the fact that this is once again a moment where we're like, how big is this going to be? Like, how much do we need to care about this? How much is this going to reshape our lives? I want you to think about what we've discussed over several episodes, right? The hands of people whose worldview we are living in, they're getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, right? This is not the way that society is shaped right now is not based on what people want. It's not based on what American people want. It's not based on what the majority of American people want. We are living in the imagination of the smallest fucking hands possible. And I felt it. I went for the Trump joke, right? Because that's also true. But what I mean is there are fewer and fewer people who are shaping our experience of the world every day, right? In a separate episode, we talked about the fact that 90% of our media companies are owned by 5 companies. That's it, like 5 people. 90% of our media ecosystem, our experience of each other, which is largely informed by online these days, is inaccurate. It's shaped by algorithms. It's shaped by the rules of a very disturbed and ugly few, right? And when we go outside and we're forced to look at each other and be around each other and be in community with each other, we're like, oh, right. Some of this shit isn't real. That's what people mean online when they say, go touch grass. Oh, some of it's not real. But if we keep destroying the things that make leaving the house worthwhile, right? And we keep making it so that people can't even afford to think about enjoyment or entertainment or fun, right? Then we're just going to get worse. Now, why would that be something that people would want? Great question. That's what we're going to pick up on towards the second half of this. Okay. Does this mean an end to movie theaters? Here's the thing. Netflix said it was going to maintain Warner Bros. Current operations and build on its strength, right? That includes theatrical releases for films. But we should be highly fucking suspicious of that, right? So Netflix acquires this. They say, we're not going to destroy movie theaters. No. We're going to expand on movie theaters, right? This is a huge about face. This is a massive pivot from everything that Netflix has been saying for the past, several years. Okay. In 2022, Ted Sarandos is the co-chief executive of Netflix, said, quote, "We make our movies for our members and we really want them to watch them on Netflix." In May of this year, so May 2025, he called theatrical distribution, quote, "an outmoded idea," right? And in October, he also said on the earnings call that they had, in an earnings call, that the company's goal was to, quote, "give our members exclusive first run movies on Netflix," right? So then I had a follow-up question, but wait, am I being parent member? We want to shape out the other side's argument so that we can demonstrate better comprehension so that we can always win. Okay. So hasn't Netflix already released movies in theaters, right? So maybe, no, yeah, they definitely have, right? So that is true. That is 100% true. Netflix has released about 30 movies in theaters. And on a call with investors on Friday, they said they wanted to keep that alive. Okay. But here's the thing. Those films were not in theaters very long. That's something that he neglected to say, right? Now, I don't know squat about what the back end infrastructure is, but I can imagine that it's kind of like what everything else is. So I do some research, right? This is what insiders call a short theatrical window. I learned that term, a short theatrical window, right? Which is honestly the window that I look at. Like that's what people see when they look at me in my neighborhood. It's just a very little short theatrical window, okay? But what does that mean? It actually has massive implications on whether or not something is successful. And when it's not successful, right, these shorter runs, we know that from data. When it's not successful, it's used to prove that these spaces that we've enjoyed should disappear. Right? We're not even talking about the economics of it, which is that all this money that should be being redistributed in our economy because people are working and producing things isn't actually happening. It's just being hoarded by the wealthy. So as costs have gone up, and despite the fact that we seem to be working endlessly, it's really hard to be just frivolous and go to a theater. That's another thing that's being capitalized on, and all this is being used to justify it, okay? So the company did not report box office results. Netflix didn't for those releases. And without a robust marketing campaign, pushing audiences to see those movies, right? James Cameron, filmmaker that do I need to say things like Avatar? Do I need to say things like Titanic? I also just like this guy because he's a freaking nerd. Like he's also out here reading dissertations by, grad students. That's what I do. What a nerd. But he did that, to figure out how to shoot the Titanic. He did that for Avatar. Like, it's fun. So what did that guy have to say, right? He called it sucker bait. That's what he said. It's a strategy. That strategy is called sucker bait, right? He said that in a recent interview. Shortened theatrical windows have been proven to be a cause of box office declines, right? So this is according to an analysis of 30 releases in 2025. Releases of 25 days or fewer, quote, produce neither theatrical benefits nor streaming gains, contradicting the idea that audiences are simply waiting for home release, okay? According to the, okay, I practice saying this, but this is a group, this Synalytic group Sin, like think of the beginning of cinema. Okay, but Nignog was not involved in making this name. The Synalytic Group, right? It's an analyst firm. This comes from them, right? So they were saying that the sweet spot is a 26 to 45 day window, which drives both better box office outcomes and higher early streaming market share. Okay, don't worry, shit's about to pick up real fast, but this is very important because what I'm realizing is we're understanding the headlines and we're getting that the implications are bad, but we're not really understanding fully the impact. And when I tell you the other shit that I'm about to tell you, Ed Top gone. All right. Producers are saying this is a fucking nightmare. So we've got us. We are the consumers. We know that that's batshit crazy. We know that there's lies happening with these theatrical runs. But so on the first level, we're just like, this is bad. It's another space, another public space that's being eliminated, another form of art and artistic expression that's potentially being eliminated for the purpose of profit, right? It'll be minimized. What happens when we stay home more and we stay home more and we stay home more? We know we haven't really fully even comprehended just how badly the pandemic exacerbated every awful thing in our society, right? That's when some of the big billionaire players really became big players, but the antisocial tendencies that have come out of it are staggering, right? The anti-intellectualism has been staggering. And not only has it seemed to just hit faster over, the 4 to 5 years since, but this year singularly is something on another level, right? On a completely different level. Here's what an anonymous group of producers wrote in a letter to Congress, right? So a group of producers put out a letter and sent it to Congress, and they said they had grave concerns about this, right? It read in part, quote, Netflix views any time spent watching a movie in a theater as time not spent on their platform. They have no incentive to support the theatrical exhibition, and they have every incentive to kill it. The producers said they didn't sign their names to the letter out of, quote, fear of retaliation. Now, we're about to fucking cook. Like, this is where we hit, okay? We're about to cook. So there's a fear of retaliation. These producers say that. I want to read something from the WGA. We're gonna get some different texts, okay? So this is the Writers Guild of America West and the Writers Guild of America East. They said, quote, the world's largest streaming company swallowing one of its biggest competitors is what antitrust laws were designed to prevent. The outcome would eliminate jobs, push down wages, worsen conditions for all entertainment workers, raise prices for consumers, and reduce the volume and diversity of content for all viewers, all of which is true. So succinctly said, right? Industry workers, along with the public, are already impacted by only a few powerful companies maintaining tight control over what consumers can watch on television, on streaming, and in theaters. This merger must be blocked. We don't have the people in place, but you want to know a sign of the decline that I'm talking about? Okay. So I don't know how many folks here got the cable, okay? But if you got the cable or if you got any of these subscription services where you have ads, you may have noticed something. So I've been watching a lot of sports. Right? Big time Big Ten guy, right? So I've been watching a lot of football. I've been watching a lot of women's basketball in the NCAA. I've also been watching a lot of men's basketball in the NCAA, right, on Hulu. Now, I'm not paying them extra prices. For no ads. Okay? We're not doing that. So I have been watching ads, commercials. We used to call them commercials. Have you noticed something? This is one of those things where you can't quite put your finger on it. Then you're like, oh, this is bad. Do you remember commercials and the fact that celebrities didn't do commercials? They did commercials during the Super Bowl. That was when it was dignified to do commercials. They weren't doing commercials like that. They were doing voiceovers, a lot of those, selling us products, but in every single commercial, almost, right? 9 out of 10. And I'm not talking about regular celebrities, right? I'm talk like old or maybe just needed a new run. No, of course, tapping into the nostalgia. But so yes, you'll get the scrub stars, but then you're also getting like Austin Butler, right? Every like I can't even, it's not even worth naming them because they're all just, it's just a bunch of A-listers. Do you know what that means? Like that should tell you something. They're not working. They're not making money the way that they used to, and they're eating this up. So no new talent is coming up. And the people who used to work commercial jobs, and that's where they got it, whether they're trying to make ends meet or trying to get into a movie or trying to get onto a television show or just trying to get work at all. Like there's, you'd walk around and you'd see a guy, you'd be like, oh my God, that's the diarrhea guy. That's where I know him from. Right? That's a sign of something. I was like this, but I couldn't figure out why it felt so dangerous. It's because on its own, it feels a little stupid, right? You're just like, oh, that's weird that they're all doing this now. But it's not just them, right? And it's not like this deal on its own. You're like, this is bad, right? But I don't really see how, and that's correct. And it's not supposed to be your job to see how this is tied into all the other things that are happening on the Hill, that are happening in billionaire circles. I'm going to read 2 quotes to you, okay? And I want you to pay attention to the language that I use, okay? Hold on, I got to put some Vaseline on my lips because whoever got my voodoo doll ain't putting the Vaseline on these lips. I told y'all. You got to put it on, okay? A little water too. Pay attention to the language that I use here, okay? So Richard Greenfield, this is an industry analyst, right, at Lightshed Partners, said this. Despite all of Netflix's success, they have never cracked the movie business. This feels like a sign of we're in a really good position, but we really haven't cracked the movie business, and we can use this to crack the movie business and accelerate what we already do, okay? Ted Sarandos, here's another quote from him. Right, again, this is the, co-CEO of Netflix. Imagine if we did a special one day. Love you, Ted. Love ya. Anyway, right, this is what he said. I wouldn't look at this as a change in approach for Netflix movies or Warner's movies for that matter. I think over time, the windows will evolve to be much more consumer friendly, to be able to meet the audience where they are quicker and all those things we like to do, right? Quicker. It's a really important word in this, right? And so that was Ted. Right? The other guy, Richard Greenfield, used another word I thought was really interesting, accelerate, right? So I've been sitting with this for a minute, and this is where we're getting into the good shit. We're going to be yapping about accelerationism and how that has everything to do with this weird feeling that you've had with all of these weird unions, right? Because that's what it feels like. There are things that make sense, but there's a political discordance and incoherence of a bunch of unions that don't make fucking sense between bodies of people, groups of people who should absolutely fucking hate each other, right? What is going on? And we've called it a bunch of things, but I want to talk to you about this, right? So that feeling that you've been feeling, that I have been feeling, because everything is happening too fast. I can't be the only person thinking and feeling this way, okay? Everything about making this show is harder, not just for the obvious reasons, but I mean, even how I access information. I can't go about it the same way that I used to. That's how much this has changed. The amount of journalism that has been undercut and the shrinkage, the people getting fired, the acquisitions that have happened in things like CBS, right, under Barry Weiss, who's I can't think of a more useless person with honestly some of the most hack ideas. Like I was like, okay, cool. Like she is going to do some shit, but I'm going to tell you something. If a lesbian don't have one of them art scarves, you're not getting anything good. Okay. Like where's the tote, bitch? Like that's how we should have known. Like she's not reading anything useful is what I'm saying. So when it came to doing these big ideas, it was all like, Israel's actually not that bad. And like, oh, you got something to say about Israel? Like, it's not even good. Have you tried reading anything from the free press? I'm like, yeah, it should be free. It's just nonsense. It's awful. I hope nobody's paying for those subscriptions, but everybody's desperate for ideas. But let me get back to the point. It feels like you can't keep up with all of the bad shit that's happening. And it feels like we don't have access to the diversity of thought, right? And, or the streamers, it feels like the algorithms work differently, how we get information works differently, that we can't keep up with how badly things are going because it's happening too quickly. One big massive merger like this, right? Think about Facebook, like back in 2017, 2018. Do you remember when they were all up in the shit trying to acquire, WhatsApp? They were trying to acquire this and that, but at least there was a fucking circus. Do you know what I mean? Like, this guy was meant to go in front of Congress and have to answer questions on the dangers of that technology. Basically, what I'm saying is a merger of this magnitude and of this size was something that the news and the media cycle was tackling and taking on for weeks, right? This is already old news, right? Almost. And the 30,000 other things that are happening that are like this, it's harder to keep track of, isn't it? It's not that just that things are getting shittier, because we know that, right? Like, our access to things is getting shittier and the quality of things is getting shittier, but also, right? Like that weird oily feeling, like maybe like I actually can't even keep up. Maybe I just shouldn't at all because this is so bad. Yeah. I'm going to tell you something. That feeling is not accidental. That feeling is by design. The feeling that you can't keep up, that things are awful, that things are happening too fast, that mergers like this Netflix Warner Brothers deal was something that once in a blue moon, right? Maybe one big one a year, but now a bunch, right? Money's getting tossed around to everything that we despise, like ICE, in ways that are unfathomable. And by the way, they're living large, right? You ever hear some of these ICE guys talk? I bet, like, they are, for them, throwing a human being out of the country, out of America, and sending them to a place they've never been before. They're going, and they see this as vacation. They see this as trips. They're like, this is awesome, because they're getting financial packages. It's awful. They're gross. What is happening, right? But again, this feeling is by design. Think of the rampant misinformation and disinformation. Think about Musk's role in the election, in our most recent election. But more than that, think about what was happening around that, right? The sudden, like, this shadow group of techno billionaires, right? Suddenly stepped out of the shadows and were very open about it in a way that we hadn't seen before. They were kissing the ring in a way that we hadn't seen before. They were that, and I remember talking about this a while ago. It meant that they were assured of something, that our opinions, our judgment, that it no longer held sway. That is a huge indication of a consolidation of power. So it's Shang Xing, or whatever the fuck that dude's name is, the billionaire that owns the LA Times, saying, you not criticizing this government no more, right? It's the Washington Post, right, that is owned by Bezos, being told, you don't endorse nobody. You don't endorse nobody. Also, don't talk so bad about this. Also maybe talk about this a little bit, right? They stepped out of the shadows, right? Zuckerberg was openly kissing the ring. And if you hate yourself, then you were listening to Peter Thiel's nonsense, but he was running around too, because he was Peter Thiel handpicked JD Vance, who became our vice president couchfucker, right? There was a union of Musk, Thiel, Zuckerberg, Shang Xing, Trump, right? And there's a bunch of other actors that are all up there. Sam Altman, right? They all don't think exactly the same, but there's something that binds them beyond money, which is the path to getting more, okay? all that disinformation and misinformation, the collapse of our democratic infrastructure, right? These massive mergers, the political incoherence, right? The economic policy that cuts government funding and infrastructure down and sends it to the private privatization of services through tech lords and overlords, right? Oh, no, government shouldn't be doing that, but this person can. Now, I use the term accelerationism. I'm going to very briefly explain where that came from. Okay, so this is a term coined by anti-capitalists in the 2010s, but before that, this was something that was embedded in Marx's The Communist Manifesto, and there's a lot of references to accelerationism, and there's a lot of iterations. So what I'm going to do is just name the two that matter, right? And then I'm going to fold it into what the fuck, how we should be thinking about this and what to do about it, like how it's spread. Okay. Hear me out. Okay. Before I tell you more, I'm going to say a statement. Okay. I'm going to say a statement. I want you to think about this. Okay. If I make this statement, I want you to think about who would agree with that statement. Okay. My statement is the democratic and liberal system is dysfunctional. We have to push on its cracks until transformation is possible. Who would agree with that statement? Leftists, right? Leftists would 100% agree with that statement, right? But then libertarians would as well. And also technocrats, right? Who desperately need no government regulation or oversight because that stops their ability to get more money. And they can't get more money unless they own the government and break down all the infrastructure that would hold them accountable. That's their union. And they had consolidated their power enough that they knew that what we cared about, what we thought about, that used to matter. Like, I don't even think it actually mattered to them, but they had to pretend to be fucking human beings. You know what I mean? They had to pretend to care. That's why Zuckerberg was standing there, what Mark Zuckerberg reminds me of? Mark Zuckerberg reminds me of of a bot, a robot that Elon Musk made and then designed the face for. Like that's what that's like. I just want you to think about like just ugly on top of ugly, okay? In terms of, but because he had to pretend that he cared about what we cared about. But they didn't have to do that anymore. And that was a massive shift. Okay. So who else might agree with that? Yeah. The billionaire class technocrats certainly would agree that the democratic and liberal system is dysfunctional because it's not functioning the way that they need it to advance, right? Who else might agree with that statement, right? The democratic and liberal system is dysfunctional. We have to push on its cracks until transformation is possible because I'm borrowing from leftist theory and logic, right? Who else might agree with that? White nationalists would agree with that. Fascists too would agree with that, right? People who like authoritarianism, because again, it's a democratic and liberal system and it's dysfunctional. And we know that it's dysfunctional, right? Right. Accelerationism is, I talked about the horseshoe thing. Let me cook because I'm working on this. Y'all know, because I think in the last episode I said I don't even know how I feel about capitalism. I have a clearer sense now. I think we have to be really clear when I'm talking about capitalism. I'm talking about free markets, but the consequences of capitalism in its, not just in its iteration, but perhaps overall, are too devastating. But again, I'm going to keep reading and keep going. Anyway, let me go back to this. Okay. So we have this term. We have a statement. If I have said a number of times that we're in this moment of horseshoe theory, okay? Horseshoe theory where it's like the right is starting to sound like the left or whatever. I think accelerationism is the arc. And like if the horseshoe is something that's actually not a horseshoe, but maybe a fucking something far more violent and murderous. But we'll get to that part later, okay? So here's the argument, and you've heard this because you're hearing all this talk about AI and all this talk about automation, right? And what the fuck does that have to do with accelerationism? Okay, it sounds like what it sounds like, which is important, right? That's the operative word. So I've said that. I've mentioned the word accelerationism, and the way that people agree with me, I'll be like, I mentioned this merger over the weekend, and somebody said, yeah, I said acceleration, and they're like, yeah, no, it's like everything's happening so fast. That's not actually what the fuck it means. Okay. I'm going to tell you what the argument is around it, and then I'm going to tell you what it means. And I'm doing it that way on purpose. So let me cook. Okay. Because I want you to know that you're familiar with this, how it's presented, even if you weren't necessarily the most familiar with the word. Okay. So accelerationists, or think of Silicon Valley elite, think of billionaires, think of like these tech losers that are talking about, well, you're a Luddite if you don't believe in the technological advancement. Okay. So what they're arguing is that technology, and computer technology specifically, and capitalism, right? Particularly the most aggressive global variety. This is what accelerationists argue, that it needs to be sped up and intensified, right? Either because it's the best way for humanity, which is what a lot of these billionaires try to espouse, or because there's no alternative, which is another thing that these billionaires try to espouse. And so do the white supremacists and white nationalists, okay? So accelerationists like Sam Altman, like Peter Thiel, like that Palantir cokehead, right? Like Elon Musk, like Zuckerberg, who has spent a fucking fortune on trying to build better AI into, these like the meta technologies, right? They are telling us that automation is good. That's their job. They're saying, no, this is a good thing. They're a huge proponent, and they name it in terms of we're merging the digital and the human. We're merging the digital and the human. Isn't that good, right? They're huge proponents of deregulation of business, right? They want a drastically scaled back government, if one exists at all. And they believe that people should stop deluding themselves, that economic and technological progress can be controlled. That's how do you remember when they were first talking about AI and like the chat GPT and everything? They're just, no, this is good. Like, we should want this. You don't want to do these awful, boring tasks, right? Let this do that, right? Yeah, no, you shouldn't control. You can't control it. This is about human evolution. You've heard this kind of talk before, right? They often believe, and they say that social and political upheaval is a good thing. This is okay. Here's the fucking facts, okay? Accelerationism goes against all of that. It's not how do I explain this? Okay. Accelerationism is where tech billionaires, white nationalists, and Jewish supremacists who believe constantly, always, that genocide is okay, and it's okay that we're in bed, white supremacists and white nationalists, because it's about getting our shit done. It's why so much of their advancements, why the fact that, the way things can be hacked on our phone, right? So much of their shit is around Mossad and its security advancements, right? And how much America uses and relies on it, even as it too is subject to the manipulations of Israel, right? They all meet up in this place. Isn't that odd, right? Even though some of their goals are antagonistic or contradictory to each other, these technocratic billionaires and these white nationalists and these, Jewish supremacists, and there's other players too. But we're talking about America, and we're talking about right now, okay? In terms of like what is influencing our experience of the world, the Zionist lobby, which I'm now referring to, amongst, it's more expensive than that, of course, but I don't think the Zionism is a term that is useful anymore. I think we have to elevate the language. You've heard me say this, I'm going to say it one more time. We have Christian extremism and fundamentalism. We have Islamic extremism and fundamentalism. And now we have Jewish or Judaic extremism and fundamentalism. It's just that simple. There is no unique, okay? But here's where they align, okay? At the core of anybody who embodies or holds accelerationist theory, and this is where I'm going to circle back to Marx and where we come in on the left, right? Because that's where it started. It's this belief that the world should be molded according to their worldview. That's the goal, to create so much upheaval, right? And concentrate so much power that I can now shape the world in my view of what it ought to be. That's what Israel is attempting to do. Not just in their geo-specific region, but everywhere, right? That's where we all meet. In America, the right-wing tech billionaires, the technocracy, right? I don't like the term, technocrat. It sounds kind of gangster. We need something worse. But for now, I'll just say it because it's supposed to mean not just a billionaire or whatever, but someone that is pushing a kind of authoritarian or ownership view. But anyway, we'll get into that another time. But in America right now, it's the right-wing billionaires, tech billionaires in particular, that have the means of accelerating their destructive and nihilist beliefs. Now, why am I saying that? Because listen to this. This is what's important, right? Accelerationism goes against everything, every ideology that you can imagine, except for itself. Like accelerationism goes against conservatism. It goes against traditional socialism, social democracy, environmentalism, protectionism, populism, nationalism, localism, and all the other ideologies that seek to moderate or reverse already unbelievably, hugely disruptive, the unbelievable pace and the transformations of and changes in the modern world, right? It goes against those things because it's not being shaped by former ideologies. It is an ideology into itself. There's a word in gaming, a term in gaming that I think you should know. That the only way I know how to name, like, because Corey told it to me the other day. Because I'm like a gamer that was super cash, but then we've gotten a little more serious. And he's like, "Oh, you like shoot and loot games?" And I was like, "I like what? Shooters and looters, right?" And it's basically like, I like to kill monsters and then I like to find cooler weapons as I go, right? That's essentially what this is. It's a grab, but you can't grab things unless, so you play all of these ideologies against each other. And the small team of people, and that's the other thing. Why are things happening so quickly? Because the checks and balances, there are fewer. The regulation, non-existent, right? The players, the hands, smaller, right? Something that impacts our entire generation is a handshake in some shitty resort named Mar-a-Lago or on a golf course. These things were true even, I moved the book, from The Brothers that I told you to read by Kinzer, but it happens faster now, right? Like, the Dulles brothers, who have shaped far more of the foreign policy than perhaps anybody else in modern history. One who was a Secretary of State, who became that, and the other who was the head of the CIA. They were absolutely against bank regulation because they wanted to get away with everything. But there were more checks and balances in place because the system was being developed out as it existed. But that's different. This is not development. This is decline. That's what we need to understand about accelerationism. Accelerationism is presenting itself as progress and as development, but it actually represents a society very much in decline. And the point is to create decline, because in that discord and upheaval, these tech billionaires can come in and rape and pillage our entire fucking system and just keep pointing the finger. This is a socialist. Get a conservative after them. Great. They're focused on that. Great. Now we can keep looting. Right now we can keep grabbing. It represents a decline. I want to say it differently. Accelerationism is point blank period anti-life. It is anti-life. It is the opposite of life. This is why we have been experiencing all these things in ways that are incomprehensible and impossible to keep up with. It's by design. And this is a word and a term that is very much out there, and has been for quite some time, but it's starting to find its audience and its legs. So this is now, I'm going to give you a little bit of a background, and then I'm going to locate, accelerationism in our now, because white supremacists, white nationalists are huge proponents of it right now. So is our tech billionaires or whatever. But let me now we can go back, because I told you I was going to be cooking babies. I told you. Okay, peep this. Okay. So remember, accelerationism was a term that was coined in the 2010s. But before that, it's like a key point. It was intrinsic to Marx, although I'll add Engels to it, but Marx's analysis in the Communist Manifesto, right? So specifically, so he didn't use the term accelerationism. That the ism part was, but the key points like the origin of it didn't necessarily need a name, but it was like the frantic. He was talking about the frantic intensification of capitalism, and how that would ultimately prompt its own demise via a revolution. Low key, it was supposed to be ours, but that's the thing. We're not the only ones that want a revolution. It's about who gets to shape the world in which we live. And the people who are doing it are the absolute worst people imaginable to do that, because all they care about is more and more money. And that's the thing that capitalism and the lack of checks, this is the opposite of a free market. This is something else, right? This is the intensification of an unhinged force, right? That ultimately, now what Marx believed was that it would lend to that force's own self-destruction. We can see that in late stage capitalism, right? But the implications of it for us are staggering. Staggering. This has helped, like, understanding this as a theory has helped me make sense of so much more, okay? Like, because I'm just like, it's not simply, well, they're just making all the money about it. It's about creating the conditions for that being possible and selling us this fucking pipe dream, okay? Get this, okay? So left-wing accelerationism can be described like, because I'm going to want us to understand where it came in, and then I'm going to make a case for why we shouldn't use it unless we intend to get on board with our fucking revolution, okay? But it's better. Everything that we do is fucking better. I don't know what to tell you, okay? But left-wing accelerationism, it is a strong critique of both capitalism and the perceived failure of capitalism of its leftist foes to envision or devise effective strategies to think through a viable post-capitalist future. That's why I have been reading so much more about it, because what is our thing? So it's it's the perceived failure of its leftist foes to envision it, right? They're not telling us, they're not giving us the answers, right? So left-wing accelerationism is then primarily concerned with confronting what it understands as these, like, as impending dooms or cataclysm or catastrophes that come from climate change, that come from financial crises characterized by committing more to neoliberalism, right, through government, the increasing privatization of public life, which is a sentence I want us to say over and over again, right? Economic upheavals, of which we're living in right now, and by increasing automation in production processes, right? Right-wing accelerationism, although it also includes pro-capitalist visions of unbridled technological development, at least since the 2010s. And this is the thing. Remember that guy who shot up the synagogue in New Zealand, right? That piece of shit, whatever. This was like years ago. But you might know what I'm talking about, right? Yeah, he was an accelerationist. So it's been there. It's been there. Okay. So since the 2010s, right-wing accelerationism. So this is different from the technocrats, right? The technocrats want unbridled. They're saying it's unbridled technological development. We're advancing our societies, right? It's fucking hoes. But since the 2010s, it's really been primarily associated with white nationalist and Christo-fascistic ideologies, right? Really, they were like, we just want an ethno-state. We want a white ethno-state, right? We want the end of a liberal democracy in favor of a white ethno-state. Now, that's Nick Fuentes, that's Tucker Carlson. That's, you notice that they've all been talking that way. Now, this should do what it did for me, perhaps for you as well. This put the manosphere in view in a very different way, because it's the manosphere then isn't simply a design. It isn't simply, first of all, it's not spontaneous. We know that. But it's not simply, well, this gender is more inclined to do this and more inclined to talk and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And actually they all care about their money. So it makes sense, right? I can make an argument for why Logan Paul would vote for Donald Trump, right? They look up to him, which is sad, but they look up to him. But also he offers them an immediate financial incentive, right? In saving money for taxes, right? So there's those things. And rather than demonize those things, I'm like, how do you compete with that? That's where my mind goes. I'm like, okay, if I know that this is the incentive, and it makes it really easy. You're not growing up with some sort of political consciousness. I certainly didn't, right? I didn't know I didn't have the terms for why any of the things that were happening to me, right? Nobody was teaching history in any meaningful way. But yeah, so I'm thinking to myself, if this is this guy who doesn't know a lot of shit, who's become very, very powerful, if this is the logic, then we have to find something that makes sense with that. So don't worry, I've been thinking of those things, but this is deeper than that. And this is, again, not just simply because money is being funded. There is a cohesion behind here that is informed by accelerationism that I didn't fully comprehend or grasp until doing a deep dive on accelerationism, right? Okay, so peep this, right? They want an end of liberal democracy. Don't we say that? Isn't that what we want too? Isn't this getting weird? This is part of accelerationism, that we start to sound alike. And then what happens is then it's like, well, we want an end to liberal democracy as it stands, but we wanted it to evolve into, transform into something leftist or something, but what steps have we taken? What power do we have, right? We don't. We talk. But then we start, I can't tell you how many times, I know she bad, but look at what Candace said about this thing and da-da-da. That's all part of it, right? Us going after each other constantly, part of it. I'm now understanding it. It's by fucking design, right? And not far more insidious than I thought. Okay, so fucking right-wing accelerationists, some of them are pro-violence, some of them want non-violent actions. But you want to know what always is the goal of accelerationism? Always. And think about the tactics that Israel uses in the media ecosystem, and also the tactics it uses to terrorize Palestinians, right? Chaos. They want chaos. What do the tech billionaires want? They want chaos. What do the white nationalists and supremacists want in America? They want chaos. What do some of the nihilistic lefties want from our side? Chaos. To prove a point, right? Oh, I can't engage, I can't participate. You're not going to hear me push back on what we all agree on. Some bullshit. But I'm simply not okay with being out organized by a bunch of fucking dweebs who are like, oh, well, let's use trans people as a lightning rod. Let's destroy women. Like, what if we just did that? What if there was a technological advancement that was just a womb? What if we don't care about bitches at all, right? And then whether they're dead or not, whether they want to be, whether they've been raped, it doesn't matter. We don't care about women. And then they can just have babies. Anyway, that Black woman who was brain dead, but forced to stay alive against her family's will because of laws in Texas, I believe, could be Georgia. I didn't know I was going to bring this up, but I have covered it in a different episode, and I'll have receipts the next time, but you could look this up. There's a Black woman who's brain dead. ProPublica covered it. And she was, against her family's wishes, she's being forced to stay alive. She's pregnant, but she's being forced to stay alive. They got no say in it because of the state's laws, right? Well, you have to follow up on these stories. What's the health of the baby that's being in gestation in an effectively dead body, right? Because in the minds of accelerationists, misogynists, incels, much of which is here, but that makes sense. Acceleration is anti-life. If you're anti-life, right, you're anti-women because they fucking know life, man. They're living it, not the weirdos. But because nobody's pampered, nobody's coddled, nobody cares what women think. So they just live life. and care about love and art, and they fucking still read literature. And for the niggas that are doing that still, they're healthier and happier because this offers nothing. The state of that baby came up preemie, a slew of health issues and underdeveloped. It turns out that a woman actually being alive matters while she's pregnant. Shocking fucking thing, right? That makes me so angry. We have reduced, you want to know a sign of accelerationism? When we fucking reduce real theories into bullshit talking points so we can score points online, right? That's accelerationism in action. Oh, why name patriarchy and misogyny when we can name toxic masculinity, which the framing around that led to a massive backlash that helped to concentrate and locate the people in the manosphere. Now, that's not women's faults. That's just by design. But I just need us to hear that it was because we started to push out this concept of toxic masculinity that single issues, systemic stories, systemic realities. You can't single story a systemic reality. But when you do that, then that person becomes the living embodiment of all that is bad and evil. Oh, toxic masculine. You know what it's good for? A bit. That's about it. Occasionally, maybe something they're saying to a friend, but not a political theory. But that's the point. It's empty and hollow. Toxic masculinity. I fucking hate that term in the same way that I hate cultural appropriation. You know where cultural appropriation makes sense? Fucking headdress on Halloween. Don't be that dumb. But you want to know what it doesn't make sense for in terms of racism? One, again, is single storing of systemic issues, and cultural appropriation becomes about blackface. Why are we inviting debate for things that the folks who came before us already locked down decades ago? We should be advancing, but we keep getting reduced. And my point is that it's not simply we're failing. It's by design where things are meant to become meaningless. We just have to be much more intentional about how we're being manipulated within it, because the point is chaos, 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 chaos. That's it. Because in the chaos, that's where the looting and shooting can happen. And that's what the tech billionaires crave. And so do these fucking losers. Okay. This isn't new. Accelerationism, it was in manifestos, from several white supremacists of today. Okay. It's the Australian white supremacists who attacked 2 mosques in Christchurch, New Zealand, right? That was in 2019. It's all over far-right discussion forums. It's something that Thiel and Musk have been huge proponents of and talk about often. Yarvin is very similar. In a lot of ways, actually, the attention that was paid to that Christchurch shooting, because remember when we would talk about a shooting like that and it would be in mainstream news, even if it happened somewhere else in the world? Yeah, well, that shooting had a lot on introducing the rightist accelerationism to a broader audience, right? I want you to think about this. Just, okay, but are you picking up what I'm putting down? Maybe I'll say it differently. One billionaire, a single billionaire, one alone, right? Let's take Musk, right? This is a person that's overseeing some of the most profitable companies on the planet, right? Who is leading a charge for transatlantic coalitions that most benefit him. Now, if you read the brothers, right, they talk about how that's literally that's how all of this happened. That's what cut out the working class and the manufacturing and manufacturing in America, right? That globalization, but that was that transatlantic coalition that never benefited Americans in any way, shape, or form, except for a small few who existed on golden fucking parachutes, right? But the whole time they're telling you, and you've heard this before, well, we billionaires generate jobs. Yeah, because they take them first. That's why. That economy that they develop was stolen economy. The checks and balances in place that were meant to stop that don't exist anymore. So the stakes are so much higher now. And they're being dealt with even less care. You know who talks about acceleration? Bannon, because he gets it. I have to say, it alarms me how much that guy and I think alike. And I don't mean like on the opposite spectrums, right? Like where I represent the leftist one and the leftist accelerationism, like not literally, but you get what I'm saying, right? And he represents we want the same things, but we want it for different reasons and we want it for different populations of people, right? Leftists want bread on the table for fucking everybody, right? Jobs, that center fulfillment, right? And where your worth is not incumbent on your production value, right? Where you can have education and healthcare, and these are value adds to your life that don't come with massive amounts of monetary debt. No, you should be able, school should be free. Education, public schools, infrastructure, these are the things that these folks want to destroy because a dumber populace means more chaos, more looting and shooting. So white supremacists use accelerationism as an expression or as an understanding that captures, that literally activates the desire to speed up the collapse of society as we know it, right? Oop, I just kissed the mic. So the ultimate goal is social chaos because then we're so inundated and we're so enraged and we're so despondent that we won't care about what else could possibly fucking happen because it's all bad. I'm going to end with something that is really important. Okay? I want you to go back to the industrial age, like just in your mind. I'll take you there, okay? There's been a couple of times where this has happened, but for millennials, we were really the first to experience a new industrial age in Silicon Valley, right? But I want to go back to the industrial age and think about, so the industrialization, the industrial revolution, what does that mean? That was a form of acceleration, right? Again, I'm not saying accelerationism on purpose. That was a form of acceleration. Our lives sped up. What do I mean? We had light bulbs. We had phones so we could access people. Before then, we were sending pigeons and shit. And then we just we're like, oh, well, don't know what to do with this fucking weird rat anymore with wings that I've been breeding and loving and whatever for how many years? We'll just let him out on the streets and we have bred out any means of survival that exists without us. So now we'll just hate them, which honestly was a huge, you want a canary in a fucking mine. It was a pigeon, baby. They got a bad break. But our world and our lives sped up. We had telephones, right? We started to develop airplanes, right? We started to have cars. Obviously, not in that order, maybe, but you get what I mean. Like you can get around faster. You could access people faster. It was massive. There were people who benefited from it immensely. But what was lost in time was how devastating it was, right? And again, I'm not against progress, right? I'm against pillage. Faulkner, who I just found out was a real racist, not like the weird side comments that I got around Jane Goodall. And you know what? I still like her. Fuck you guys, okay? When else are we going to be talking about chimpanzees? Faulkner and, postmodernist work. I really like postmodernist literature. What is postmodernism? It really is just them being like, actually, those bitches were wrong about a lot of things. And one of those things was, it was the language around industrialization that I want you to think about. It wasn't the action, the fact that it happened, right? Where the world sped up. But yes, there were so many people that were left behind. As I Lay Dying is a great work. Actually, I don't even know. It's one of my favorite fucking works. And I'm like, should I even say, he was such a fucking racist that it shook me. I was like, oh, fuck him. I haven't processed that out loud yet, so we'll come back to that. I'm a heartbreak of a literary nerd. Fuck you, Faulkner. But anyway, in that book, they capture the nomads and the lost generation. You had it's not even in that book, in all the books of that time, right? So you had all of these folks who were disillusioned. They were like us. They came back from having to fight all these wars and for what, right? What they had seen. And so they're called the lost generation. So in conjunction with the people who were left behind by the industrial age, which was everybody poor, and everybody who was, working in specific jobs, it was that lost generation as well. Like they didn't have the means to keep up. They were the ones who were still using the horse and buggy when everybody was driving around in fucking cars. So there's who John Steinbeck is talking about, right? In some cases, although I don't know that I like fully classify. Anyway, that's another conversation. But it was the language around that era that matters, right? And this is where we round it out. What was the language? Technology was going to save us, right? We were going to have a massive technological revolution. We were going to be saved. We were going to be freed. It was amazing. Technology is going to save us. That was the promise. That's what was described in modernisms, right? It's like we could make a perfect person. Now go back to the fact that these technocrats are saying what accelerationists want is they say that they want a full hybrid of human and technological advancement where we become one, right? Falling in love with AI or putting chips in our fucking heads, right? And there's a need for that because there's profit in that, because we become more and more useful. The part that I always missed about the Matrix, I think I was like, it was too gruesome, or maybe I just wasn't watching it closely enough. The right is stupid. And so they're always like, the red pill and the blue pill, red pill, red pill, red pill. I'm alive. I'm a free thinker. Yeah. You want to know what humans were being used for? They were like a biological energy source. That's why we were kept in those capsules. So Neo takes the fucking pill, right? Opens up his little pod and goes and meets the other people in the revolution and is like, okay, let's go do this. And then we find out that it's to power some massive, we're just a source of energy. We're a biological energy source for this this massive entity. It's not so different in how we're viewed in an accelerationist mind view. It's only white nationalists and supremacists that think that they're somehow vital to this plan, right? But it was always, it's like this push of this perfect person, this godlike person that could benefit because the technology will make us perfect. It will make us better because technology is neutral. Technology is pure. Technology is God-like. If you listen to the language, but here's the thing that Zora Neale Hurston told us, right? Gods always behave like the people who created them, right? Always. We built our same biases and our same bullshit into the technology. And when it does shift towards some sort of balance, it can be manipulated and skewed, as Elon Musk has done over and over and over and over and over again, right? We were prepared for a certain kind of world, millennials. We were promised that was the world we were going to live in. And then we saw the internet. So that was our age, right? The introduction of the internet. So back then they were promised this perfect world, a perfect world, because technology was going to make us perfect. You can go and look into it because there's endless quotes and, books from that time and blah, 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 blah. And one day I'll read all about, I'll tell you all about it because I wrote about this extensively in university and then later on when it was inappropriate. Okay. Like I should have been writing a memoir and I was like, guys, look what I wrote. And they were like, amazing. This does not belong here. Okay. Right. Modernist literature use literary devices to promote certain ideas. That's what literature is for. But we've moved literature out for the internet, right? We've sped everything up. And now we're in this place of rapid decline of the Western world. And it's really hard. Like I think about the fact that millennials were called in like over 25 articles the unluckiest generation. In that way, we're like the lost generation of the industrial age because the technology, it's not called our major age is the information age. That was our massive, tech revolution of our time. Back then it was industrialization. That's when, they were like, oh, wait, we don't need candles. We got bulbs, bitch. Bulbs, light whenever I want it, bitch. Right? I just, honestly, that probably was super lit. Right? But it was meant to liberate, like the technology was told that it was going to liberate us. And that's what these charlatan technocrat fuckheads are telling us acceleration is going to do. It's going to, this is about liberation. We're going to liberate you by making these technological advancements. Aren't you tired of shit being the same as it is? Yeah, no, this is how we do it. But first we have to get these things out of the way. Also, immigrants and trans people and Black people are problems, right? Technology was going to liberate us because we could not overcome our own social failings, right? Our societal failings, human beings, even though we created them, we can't overcome them on their own. So we need technology to help us, right? And we were blamed. Like everybody's blamed. Human beings are blamed for this all the time. Like, but generations are blamed. We blame Gen Z is getting blamed for being how they are. Millennials are getting blamed, but we blame. The same way that the lost generation of the industrial age was being blamed for why they couldn't keep up, right? And, we lied for a little while. We lied about it. We were like, okay, maybe, and sure, there was the mental health stuff, but we were like, maybe this could be, that's the joke. Maybe we could be good. Maybe this is a good thing, right? That actually, to progress as a society, which requires technological advancements, is the moral thing to do. That was what Silicon Valley sold us. It's the moral thing to do, right? We have an objective as human beings to advance and progress our, our belief systems, our way of life, and the only way to do that is through tech. And my God, and we watch people drink the juice, even as the people who designed these social media platforms, etc., wouldn't allow their own children to use it. And in a way, we were kind of forced to, because the economy bottomed out for millennials, as we know, and we talked about why, right? Entrenched, boomer tax, the capital gains tax, America becoming the default currency by design, right? Americans and billionaires and whoever design, like they helped shape that shit. Well, they became billionaires largely for that reason. And I've said this before, the bigger the mouth, right? The bigger the mouth, the more it needs. Like the bigger the whale, the bigger the mouth. At a certain point, there are no mergers that can tick up your wealth when you're in the hundreds of billions, right? Each sale, 70 billion, 80 billion there, but it's not something you get to pocket. They want to see massive shifts. Well, guess what gave Jeff Bezos that? The pandemic, chaos, right? I'm going to tell you this, right? I'm going to tell you this, and maybe we'll switch to fucking Hemingway, and there's in one of Hemingway's books, he's got Jake Barnes, who is a representative of the lost generation. So that's a modernist author that if anyone tells me that he's a rabid racist, I'm done, because I'm like, he's a pugilist and he loved a good whiskey. That's my man. Okay. But Jake Barnes, who was from the lost generation, said when he was asked, whether or not these types of things would be good in the book, he goes, isn't it pretty to think so? Right? Isn't it pretty to think that, yeah, there's this thing, a failsafe that we can all pull, but it's not a fucking failsafe. It's a fucking hatch. And the second it's open, we all get sucked the fuck out of it. That's that. So all to say, we're in this moment where we have to reject the idea that technology is our perfect thing, because it actually fucking isn't. We've got millions of people struggling and more dispossessed people than ever before. And the way to fight back against this is simply by fighting. I don't know what else to, it's just making cool shit and trying to push our worldview as something meaningful. We're participating in this, whether we want to actively or not. So we might as well throw some fucking punches. Anyway, I genuinely want us to just sit with this for a little bit, okay? Because I'm going to just say this point blank period, and then I'll end it. This will mark the end because I can talk, okay? Technology will not save us, okay? But it doesn't have to destroy us either. It's just that simple. But it's not. There's no thing that's going to come in and save us. Like, we are our best resource, and in fact, none of this matters if there's nobody to fucking use it. The whole point is to make us obsolete. Right? So that more wealth can be generated without human failings like biology and age. Never count us out. That's all I have to say. Just never count us out. I believe in us. So I'll leave you with another fucking quote from another author, right? Because of the modernist era, and then I'm going to say goodbye to you babies, okay? For us, there is only the trying. The rest is not our business. That's it. We just have to try. The rest isn't our business. It is my fucking business, though, and I'll tell you all the time. Okay, anyway, thanks for hearing me yap. We're going to keep it right and tight in the oncoming ones. I think I like doing something with heft at least once a week that makes us think, and then I try to so there's going to be some good clips we got to go over tomorrow and everything else. But I want to say, I love you so much. And you're not crazy. You're not crazy. Not like well, you kind of are. And that is the appropriate response. Like it would be scary if we weren't feeling a little bit insane by what's happening, but we don't have to give into it. Right. So we have all the collective knowledge and expertise that we need to change society, and we can use technology for good. I've talked about how AI is helpful with cleaning up fucking oceans and deforestation prevention, and also finding new medications and vaccines. And those people are doing that work. We don't need fucking billionaires. We don't need technocrats. And we have to reject accelerationism at its very fucking core. I love you all so much. Make things, think things, get offline sometimes, right? I'll always see you in the streets, but this shit is so far from over. But the reason why everything is speeding up in ways that feel incomprehensible, and the reason why that there's all these betting losers, and they're all finding each other, even when their goals are contradictory, accelerationism. They're selling it to you as something useful, but it is why our lives suck right now. Accelerationism is the theory that tech billionaires are using to say technology is good and we should be happy for automation, and we should be happy for all these new advancements that are making human beings obsolete, right? All while they pillage. Accelerationism is nothing more than a fucking looter and shooter game to these tech billionaires. And it's why you don't get options and you don't get choice. It's why you work 8 jobs and you still can't make ends meet. And they tell you it's because you're not fucking trying hard enough. And then they tell you the reason why you feel the way that you do is because of trans people, and because of immigrants, and because of Muslims, and because of Black people, right? It's the billionaires. It's the billionaires, and it's the technocrats in particular. And you want to know something? Shout out to Bill Gates, right? Because the reason why I keep saying technocrats is because, Bill Gates is going to give away 99% of his wealth. After he kicks the bucket. We got a fight in front of us, babies, but oh boy, are we ready. So I love you so much. Don't forget to make things, right? Don't just consume content, create it. That's how revolutions start. I love you all so much, and I can't wait for our next episode of Dark Woke. Thanks to Corey for making us look good, sound good, and thanks to all of you that just keep me in the game. I thank you so much, actually. I'm always grateful. So with that, I'll see you tomorrow, and love you.